Okay, welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to custom make a black book. So some of you may be familiar with the black book. It's called the black book because it's black. I mean, technically it's just a black book, but it's a sketchbook or a drawing book or a painting book. Now this specific book was a commission. So someone wanted me to customize their black book in order to give to their kid so they can keep track of all the drawings. I guess the kid's at an age where he likes to draw everything from little cartoon characters to his parents. But I wanted to get kind of creative with this one. So you can see right here I'm going to make a stencil because he's a young boy. I figured paint, drips, splatter. So I'm custom making a little stencil. I cut it out with some scissors. Initially, I was going to use a razor blade, but the razor blade was really dull. In order to get the right contour and edging, I just used scissors. Now, we're going to be working with a few different kind of paints. I'm working with Rust-Oleum 2X. You can see it in the background. I'm also working with Montana 94s. Now, both of these dry in a matte to flat finish, which is kind of nice. Anytime you have a paint that has a gloss finish, it dilutes the pigment. So a matte finish, a flat finish has much more pigment in the paint, and it's also not as bright. It's also going to be very friendly on the hand. Something that has a gloss finish is going to slide around, scratch up. So this is kind of nice. It's going to dry flat, and you can see here I'm using the stencil. It's going to be a multicolored stencil in drips, various blues. I actually made a mistake here. I didn't put the stencil high enough, so I have to put it back on, spray it again. This was kind of a battle because paint doesn't want to dry in cooler weather. It's kind of cool in the shop. So I was kind of struggling with it. But at the end of the day, I got it to work. I also wanted to wrap around the book. So the spine of the book got painted, and then the back of the book got painted. We are in January, so I figured this is a perfect time to get the book to the customer because the kid's probably going to start drawing right away. And I don't remember how many pages are in the book, but there are definitely at least 100 to 150 pages, two sides. So he's going to have ample time to fill this book up. And I figured he could start now, and by the end of the year, hopefully he'll have this thing completed, and then they can keep it as a keepsake and later on give it back to the kid and show him, hey, look at what you did at this age back in this year. I don't know. I thought it was a fun idea. All right, so now between colors, I dried the stencil. So you don't see it, but I have a little heat gun that I was using to dry the book and actually dry the stencil out. Because once you start applying multiple layers of paint, it just gets thicker and thicker, and it could cause problems. You could actually see right here, it's starting to drip, and that is a direct correlation to the cool weather and the thickness of the paint. And I messed up. You can see I applied too much paint. It bled behind the stencil. So now I'm coming back with the negative stencil that I kept. This is important. If you guys are going to make a stencil, keep the positive, keep the negative, or the upper portion, bottom portion. I dry it off, and I get back to spraying. So now I'm working on the back of the book. I actually like it. It's coming out great. It's a tricolor, various greens and blues. I believe it's a turquoise, a lagoon, and I forget what the 94 blue is, but it's very subtle. Like, once it's done, once all the layers are applied, it's going to be a very subtle drip, which I kind of like. So now I'm on the back. So here I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to spray this with a black, but I had a flat black. And once I spray this with a flat black and I look at it, I realize there's just too much flat color on the book. So I decided to switch it up and add some white. So you'll see right here, I got my stencil out, my number 2. I cut a hole in the folder so I get the 2 real crispy with no overspray. Looks good. And I'm going to finish it off, right? This is the back of the book, 2025. I'm going to offset the numbers. I kind of feel that, offsetting numbers, as long as they're straight, kind of gives it another layer of custom versus having something linear and straight across. So the 5 is offset to the 2, just slightly. They're touching, but they're offset. Now I am applying more black. I'm like, all right, the thing needs more black. Did a few spray paints here and there, more drips. Again, the theme is drip and splatter. Now we're starting to add more complexity to this. And mind you, all of you guys could attempt to do this. This is why I'm showing you how easy it is. There's 3 colors of spray paint. I'm sorry, 4. 3 colors of blue, 1 black, and then a white acrylic paint. And this is all like by hand and a really inexpensive brush and a stencil. You don't have to do the stencil. You guys could just spray. If you look at one of my other videos, I did another black book and it was all done with just spray. I didn't use a stencil. It was really fun. Like, these things came out great. All right, back to the back of the book. So I covered the 25 completely. I just didn't like it. It was like, it was too boring. And I figured it needed white. So I applied more black, and I wanted the best contrasting color possible, which is white, right? Black and white. They go well together and they contrast the best. One's the darkest, one is the lightest. So everything's getting dried in between these layers. I take my little heat gun, apply it, and I also wanted to give the illusion that these numbers are not transparent, but like tattered, right? You can still see the black through the number, which is what I was going for. Like, I wanted to look a little distressed, tattered, rugged. This one's going for a young boy, and I feel he's probably just going to beat this thing up anyway. As much as I'd like to think he's going to take care of this, he's going to beat the crap out of this book. It may not even make it a week, all right? It may fall into dirt. It may get chewed up by a dog. A juice may spill on it. Anyhow, I just want it to look like it's been through war, even though it's brand new. So here I am. All right, now we're back on the 5. I like how the white's looking against the black and the blue. You could still see the drips in the background. I'm taking a very dry brush. These brushes, you can buy them in a pack of, I want to say like 10 or 20 at Home Depot. But they're very inexpensive brushes, and they're not good brushes. They're just for cleaning around the house, the shop, cleaning little parts. But I like them because they're very dry bristle. They're very firm bristle, so you get a very inconsistent brush stroke. I'm also applying, this is white acrylic paint, by the way. So when I apply the acrylic paint, you don't want to dilute it. I just apply a thin line on the piece of paper, dunk the brush in it. You can see the bristles just to the right. They're really firm, and it gives you this cool effect that it's kind of transparent, so it's not covering the entire background. And that was the look I was going for. So between each letter, this kid's name's Ethan. Between each letter, I whip out the heat dryer and I dry it. If you don't do that, you're gonna have problems when you apply the other stencil. And right here, I'm just trying to find my placement. I wanted each letter to touch each other, but I also realized at this point that I should have put the E up a little higher. Now, this is a me problem. There's no real right or wrong to this. You could have spread the letters out however way you wanted it. In my opinion, it's just better if it's symmetrical. But right here, you can see I'm like, oh no, the H is sitting too low, and I need to bring it up a little bit in order to get the other letters to fit. Again, it's going to a young boy. He's not going to care, and I don't think his parents are even going to know the difference. They're going to love this as a gift. All right, we're working on the A, which looks cool. And again, going back to the transparency, you can kind of see a little bit of the blue like coming through the white, but I think it needed the white and the black. Like, for some reason, just having the black without the white looked too dull, and the white being a very neutral color but also a bright color makes up for the lack of gloss. So now I'm using a white spray can because I needed a little something different, which this is actually it's kind of funny. I was like, all right, I want to add some drips to the 25, keeping with the theme. And the only thing I could find that had a really sharp point was an old screw. So be creative. Grab whatever's handy, whatever's convenient, because technically anything is a tool if you know how to use it. So I'm using the screw. I sprayed some white spray paint on an old scrap piece of paper. I'm applying some drips to the 2 and the 5. And then right now I'm thinking like Wolverine style. You know how he's got those claws and he like rips the stuff. So I want the letters and the numbers to look a little more tattered than they already look. I mean, we already added the acrylic paint to them with the brush strokes, but it just doesn't look enough. So I'm adding the drips, but in a moment you're gonna see I'm gonna start to go diagonal and match the brush strokes. So I think it was kind of important to do that, at least for the young boys. This commission, it's going to the young kid. It just seemed like a little bit better. So yeah, you can see I'm just going a little bit diagonal, matching the brush strokes so it kind of blends in, but I wanted more white. Like I just needed it to be like it's just ripping and tearing, and yeah, it's just a look I'm going for. Real distressed, rugged look. I kind of like how it's coming out. I really wish that the black worked, but I'm thoroughly happy with how the white is looking. It's just what it is. You guys can use whatever color you want. I'm just showing you what I used. And this was not a request. Only the names were a request. And just do whatever you want. And I figured, hey, boy and a girl, pink and blue, seems like it'll work for me. So now we're working on the front. Again, going with that tattered theme look. Sprayed some more white spray paint on it. And I'm just taking the screw and just kind of taking the white on a diagonal axis in order to get this real shredded look. But I think more white looks kind of good, especially the white against the black. No drips on the front. Now that I'm thinking about it, I probably should have added some drips, but it's not necessary. And yeah, again, it's important. Use the heat gun every time you put a layer on. So if you add a white, spend about 5 seconds, use the heat gun on it, because you don't want to have problems with 2 different kind of colors mixing like I had in the beginning with the stencil. You also don't want things sticking to each other, like the paint will easily stick to a piece of paper or to itself and tear off. But also don't use the heat gun. You could probably use a hairdryer. So if you guys have a hairdryer, use a hairdryer. But don't use the heat gun or the hairdryer too close for too long, because it will burn the paint. It'll start to bubble, it'll peel off, it will discolor. So just be real mindful of that if you're going to customize one. And this could be applied to canvases, wood, anything you're going to customize. In this case, we're just customizing a book cover, a black book cover. Yeah, and the reason for the date is I figured, either the parents are going to want to keep this, the kids are at an age where they're spending more time drawing, doing a better job, being more thorough rather than just doing stick figures. So at the end of the year, they can look back and say, oh, this was done in 2025, and just keep it, throw it in the bookshelf or something. They can look back and say, hey, when you were this age, you were doing this. But you can see I had very little bleed through on the edges. That's why I use that blue painter's tape. And this is what it looks like when it's done. I think I like it. We'll see you on the next one. Thanks.